excited to be here today to help celebrate Women Equality Day. I would like to thank Judy for inviting me to speak to you all today. It seems like just yesterday that Judy and I spoke at the Hall of Justice, along with many of you, to celebrate women's suffrage and the ratification of the 19th Amendment. I thank those of you who were able to participate and help make it such a wonderful event. We had so much fun at the Hall of Justice that day. I also applaud you for the work you all do in this amazing organization to empower and advance women, and as your mission states, to create a more perfect democracy. In 1973, our Congress passed a joint resolution designating August 26th as Women's Equality Day to commemorate the adoption of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, a milestone that changed history for women across our great nation. In addition to honoring the voting milestone, this national observance also calls attention to women's continuing efforts toward full equality. Many workplaces, libraries, organizations, and public facilities across the country now mark Women's Equality Day with celebrations, resources, educational programs, and more. Looking back, the 19th Amendment, not only opened doors for women at the polls, but the reform also opened up opportunities for women to officially hold leadership positions that were previously unavailable to them. If not for the struggles and the sheer determination of legions of women suffragists more than 100 years ago, I would not be standing before you today as the 11th woman to serve on the Michigan Supreme Court. My personal story involves obstacles and challenges as well. I knew when I was 12 years old that I wanted to go to law school and one day be a judge, even though no one in my family had gone to college or was in the legal profession. However, as often happens in life, my plans didn't go exactly as I thought they would. I was a single mother at a very young age. It was very difficult. I had so many people tell me what I couldn't do, what options I didn't have, what my limitations were, all because of my situation. I didn't listen to those people and the future that they saw for me. I fought for my goals and my dreams and sought out people to help me follow the path I wanted. It was a lot of hard work and I faced a lot of roadblocks, but I never gave up on myself. I worked hard to get a scholarship to college. I worked full-time, studied long hours late into the night, all while raising my son alone. I graduated from college and continued to follow my dream to be a lawyer. I truly believe it was my determination and my refusal to let other people dictate what my future would be that allowed me to grow into the person, personally and professionally, that I became. I had to fight for it, work harder, stay positive, as well as be humble and patient. I'm a better lawyer and judge because of my life experiences, but more importantly, I'm a better mother to my children. A few important lessons I learned along the way. Women are held to a higher standard. We continue to fight for equity in pay, advancement, and how we are treated at work. And we still struggle to find work-life balance, if there even is such a thing. My education, along with much determination and focus, has guided me along a unique path within state government. Having worked in all three branches of state government, I have a unique perspective that I bring to the court. I've had the privilege at the state level of helping to enact laws, of providing counsel to our chief executive on policy issues, and on the court, I am proud to be charged with applying and upholding the rule of law. I was grateful and honored to be appointed by the governor in November of 2017 to become the 113th justice of this prestigious institution. I replaced Justice Joan Larson, who had departed after being appointed to the federal bench. And I'm currently one of 3 women on the Michigan Supreme Court. Chief Justice Bridget McCormick was elected in 2012 to become the 9th woman on the bench, and this year became the 6th woman Chief Justice in our state's history. Justice Megan Kavanaugh, who was elected in 2018 to become the Supreme Court's 12th woman justice, has the distinction of being the first woman in her family to serve on the bench. Her father, Michael Kavanaugh, having served until his retirement in 2014. And he even swore her in on Inauguration Day. So that makes 12 women in the history of the Michigan Supreme Court out of 115 total. We still have a lot of work to do. As of this year, Michigan reached a major first as the only state where women serve as governor, attorney general, secretary of state, and chief justice. The These accomplishments and milestones can be traced back to the hard-fought achievements of women suffragists. It was not very long ago when women began making real strides towards gaining a voice in the highest institutions that govern our state and our nation. For instance, it was 1972, less than 50 years ago, when Michigan voters elected the first woman to the Michigan Supreme Court, Mary Coleman. A few years later, in 1976, Dorothy Comstock Riley became the first woman to serve on the Michigan Court of Appeals, later becoming the second woman to serve on the Supreme Court. You can learn about these amazing women jurists at our Learning Center exhibit at the Hall of Justice called First Women on the Court. We can also be proud that Michigan was a little ahead of the curve, as these landmark achievements happened a few years before Sandra Day O'Connor became the first woman appointed to the United States Supreme Court in 1981. Her appointment to such a prominent national leadership position opened up even more opportunities, broke through some barriers, and really cemented a legacy that continues to allow women the opportunity to rise to positions of influence. As we have seen in the three women who followed in her footsteps, Justices Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is my personal favorite, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan. But it wasn't all smooth sailing for any of these leaders. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, for instance, has shared many accounts of the battles she had to fight just to be included in conversations and get her foot in the door. After graduating at the top of her class from Columbia Law School, she found it hard to get a job because few law firms at the time had opened their doors to women. When she finally secured a position with a lower-ranking district court judge, she said that was only after one of her mentors threatened to stop sending clerks his way if he turned her down. Thankfully, times have changed enough that women are now able to steer their own career paths towards finding and creating new opportunities. Since retiring from the U.S. Supreme Court in 2006, Justice O'Connor has forged a new path as a tireless advocate for improving civics education across the country. She has dedicated her time to promoting web-based learning tools for middle school students and established iCivics, a program that uses web-based educational tools to teach civics education and to inspire students to be active participants in our democracy. There's even a national award named in her honor for the advancement of civics education. In Michigan, women in our judiciary have continued to build on these accomplishments since then as well. In 1997, the Michigan Supreme Court had its first female majority, with Justices Comstock Riley, Patricia Boyle, Elizabeth Weaver, and Marilyn Kelly. We have also seen 6 women step up to serve in the role of Chief Justice, including our current Chief Justice, Bridget McCormick. Today in Michigan, 38% of our judges statewide are women. This compares to 34% in 2017 after the 2016 election and only 5% in 1979. Including appointments in the 2018 election, the number of female judges grew by 12.5% from 2017 to 2019, the biggest increase on record. It's also interesting to compare this to women leaders in other fields. 24% of the U.S. Congress are women. 36% of the Michigan legislature are women, compared to 28% nationwide. 22% of C-suite executives are women. And only 6% of CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are women. An interesting fact, women are more likely to be elevated to CEO when the company is in crisis and in need of a turnaround. Maybe they should just have them start there, and then they wouldn't need to do that turnaround. In 2018, women judges in Michigan made history as all the leaders of our 4 major judicial associations in Michigan were led by women for the first time. These 4 women have distinguished themselves with their leadership skills and their successful legal careers, but they also understand the importance of celebrating their achievements, not just as individuals, but also as part of the greater tapestry of women who have risen to prominent positions in their fields. Also in 2018, women outnumbered men in law school for the 3rd year in a row nationally, according to the American Bar Association. While the accomplishments and milestones seem relatively recent, we all know that women's historical contributions to society and to the building of our nation specifically reach back much further. Now, as national movements and cultural shifts are focusing more attention than ever on the empowerment of women, we must build upon that momentum by standing together to celebrate our victories, by helping one another to overcome challenges, and by building a strong foundation to support future women leaders. Justice O'Connor said, "We don't accomplish anything in this world alone, And whatever happens is a result of the whole tapestry of one's life and all the weaving of individual threads from one to another that creates something. This is so true. One of the main reasons I sit on the bench of the Michigan Supreme Court today is because my family, teachers, and mentors have invested in me and my path forward. And as a great way to pay it forward to future generations in our respective professions is through mentoring. I am very proud that the Michigan Supreme Court also believes in the power of education and guidance through mentoring. The court has worked over the years with several organizations, the State Bar, Women Lawyers Association of Michigan, and the National Women Judges Association, to name a few, on a variety of mentoring events for students from grade school through law school. A great example of this is Clinton County Circuit Judge Michelle Rick. She devotes countless hours mentoring both law students and high school students. Judge Rick spearheaded launching the MentorJet program to Michigan law schools and started a similar effort, Face of Justice, with the State Bar of Michigan. MentorJet is a bit like speed dating. Legal professionals like Judge Rick sit at tables and mentor law students who move from table to table to ask questions and get advice. Her enthusiasm for mentoring is so inspirational. We also engage with communities around the state twice a year as the entire Supreme Court takes its show on the road. This spring, we made a trip to East Grand Rapids High School for our biannual Court Community Connections program. This was the court's 24th time hearing oral arguments on the road before an audience of mostly high school students. We coordinate this effort through school districts and local attorneys who volunteer their time to mentor and guide the students through the case, and then it culminates with them being able to watch oral arguments in person in their own community. The students also have an opportunity following oral arguments to ask questions of the attorneys who argued the case. What I really love about this program is that it not only provides a forum to educate kids about the court system and give them firsthand access to the court, but it also gives us justices and local judges a chance to engage with students, to share our leadership stories, to hear a little about their aspirations, and perhaps to provide some inspiration and wisdom to them. All right. What I really love about this program is that it not only provides a forum to educate kids about the court system and give them firsthand access to the court, but it also gives us justices and local judges a chance to engage with students, to share our leadership stories, to hear a little bit about their aspirations, and perhaps to provide some inspiration and wisdom to them. In addition to mentoring outside of the courts, the Supreme Court also provides mentoring programs and education for new judges to help guide them as they embark on their new roles on the bench. As the Supreme Court liaison to the Michigan Judicial Institute, which oversees educational programming for courts, I am so pleased that we are working towards fostering a culture of empowerment through education among current and future leaders. I hope I have given you some food for thought on the importance of empowering each other and the next generation of leaders in your field. I encourage you to draw strength from the women who have come before you while remembering to support those who follow you as well. Educating yourself and taking advantage of new opportunities and other resources from your professional associations give you the experience and knowledge you will need in order to succeed in whatever you do. However, I feel that it's the support and solidarity that you receive from your colleagues and mentors that will motivate you to keep reaching higher. I know that that's what impacted me the most. We have to all commit to mentoring young women, even when we are short on time. We can't take a pass because we are too busy to do a perfect job at it either. An imperfect mentor is far better than no mentor at all. We have to push our own workplaces to be places where women can thrive and advance. What that means specifically will be different depending on the workplace, but let's make sure that barriers to women leading are removed. Let's identify our male allies and support and encourage them. Let's make sure we don't let unimportant differences get in our way, like partisan affiliations, cultural and age differences, because those enhance and enrich our partnerships. And finally, let's support one another when we are willing to put ourselves out there. In a nutshell, we need more women running more things, and we won't achieve that by waiting patiently. We can demonstrate a better way through empathy, kindness, gratitude, and civility, but also tenacity, firm footing, and taking your place at the front. There was much controversy during Michigan Supreme Court Justice Dorothy Comstock Riley's tenure on the court, but she always displayed steely determination against any obstacle. And when she was inducted into the Michigan Women's Hall of Fame, she described her philosophy on how to become a leader. The way to proceed is always to do the very best you can. Try to make yourself invaluable to the person you work for, and don't bring your problems to the office, because that is not what you were hired to do. That formula worked for me, and I believe it can for anyone. Do the very best you can, be invaluable, don't complain about your life. That was Justice Riley's prescription for success, and though her words might seem a bit old-fashioned now, I think her advice still rings true today. I wish you all the best, and I'm looking forward to question and answers. I had some great questions while we were eating lunch, so feel free to ask me anything. I'm so excited to be here, and I know that there's a lot of fans of my colleague Justice McCormick in the room as well. I had lots of questions about her when we were eating lunch. So.
As you described the enormous grit that got you to where you are, I wondered if you could reflect also on changes in the law that made it possible for you to do what perhaps your great-grandmother couldn't have done.
In the law in Michigan, or just in general in the law.
Yeah.
I think when I think back, and one of my favorite stories that has been told a lot this year by our state bar president, it's about a Supreme Court decision, Michigan Supreme Court decision, to kick a woman that ran and won as prosecutor out of office. This was back in the late 1800s. Yep, it's a great story, and really the important part of it for me was the dissent. And there was a dissenting, they were all male justices obviously, and the dissenting justice, the dissent that he wrote just laid out what are we doing? How are we arriving at this decision, and saying that women can't hold office? And I feel that when I first heard that story, and I went back and I read that dissent, and to me that's that dissent led to changes in the law after that. And when I read that, I realized how important it is for me in my job, even if I'm not on the winning side of a decision, to stand up and to say what needs to be said if I don't agree with something. And so you have a Supreme Court decision and the law changing because of that dissent, and then the impact that it's having, over 100 years later on people that hold the same position or in the same profession. So.
Another question?
Sonia Sotomayor was in town, and she had a question about when the court members disagreed and sort of how they dealt with that, and she talked about working harder to convince those members that disagreed with them, and I wondered if that was your same experience working with the other justices.
It's actually easy to write a dissent because you don't have to get anybody to agree with you. You can just write exactly what you think. If you're working on a majority opinion, or you're trying to get to a majority, there's a lot of compromise that happens. I would say that it is rare for an opinion to come out from our court, even if it's a 7-0 decision, that is exactly the way that the author wants it written, or the way I would write it if I was the author, because it takes a lot of compromise. I think that we get better product that way, because our opinions are more narrowly tailored, and I think we're more careful in what we're writing. But my experience is, it can be very challenging. A lot of what we do on the court, yes, you have to have the intelligence to be able to understand the law and to be able to apply the law and do the work. But a lot of it is relationships and personality, and figuring out what matters to your colleagues, and working through things on them. There was one case that me and one of my colleagues battled on all term long. And I appreciated that about him. I appreciated that he felt very strongly about it. I did, and neither one of us was going to give up until the very end. Till that opinion went out, we weren't going to give up. And to me, that's what the job is and what we need to be doing.
To interpret the law that is not clear. There's no bright line. And since you've sat in the legislative branch, you've sat in the executive branch, and now the judicial, when you identify from the judicial branch something that needs to be done by either the executive or the legislature or both, what is your experience with how successful you are? Sometimes in your decisions you'll say, this is something only the legislature can do. How successful is that message getting across to the other branches, and do they take action or they just ignore you?
So from my time on, legislature needs to fix this, whatever statute it is that we're talking about. Not that they have the option to. Like, it's not that they say, oh, well, we like this result, so we're just going to leave it alone. There's an actual problem. There's a conflict between laws, and they haven't done anything. We're working on those relationships and working with staff in the legislature to get those messages across. Like, hey, we keep seeing these cases coming. It's not something that can be fixed at the court. It needs to be fixed by the legislature, and we're working on that. When I worked in the Michigan Senate, one of my favorite things to do was to read Court of Appeals and Supreme Court cases and figure out what they were saying about what we needed to be doing. And then that's where we got some of our best ideas from, as far as introducing legislation. So, there's definitely some improvement that needs to happen there. But a lot of the stuff that we're doing, I think that they don't find, even though it needs to be changed, it might just not be interesting enough for them, or we might not, have a specific legislator that can get behind that and wants to do something about it. Executive branch, I find that the executive branch is very responsive to changing, or if they see a case coming through the court system, they might change their policies even before the case gets to us. But the legislature is not as responsive.
That could contribute to non-responsiveness or lack of movement. From your colleagues, from what they've said, that they see a difference?
They're young, they don't have a lot of legislative experience, they're being put into leadership positions. So I think that there's definitely some impact because of that. I do think that there's really good staff people in both the House and the Senate that have been there a lot longer than most of the legislators, and so I think that that's helpful. But I'm actually curious about this. I'm going to go back and talk to my colleagues about some of the cases that and sometimes they keep coming and we're like, okay, well now they're going to change it. And we had one this term where we were like a message to the legislature in a statement that Justice Markman wrote, because we were just so confused. Why are they not fixing this? This cannot possibly be their intent. Why are they not fixing it? So it's rare for us to do that, but I think there was a lot of frustration because over the last, even before I was on the court, they kept seeing the same issue keep coming.
Tell us what led to your decision on the anti-gerrymandering case that came before the Supreme Court?
What led to it? Like what my decision making was?
Yes.
Okay. So I've had a lot of people because of all of the I don't even crap around all of that. Oh, sorry, excuse me. That was the first word that I could think of. Say to me that had to have been very difficult. And my response is, it really wasn't a difficult question. In my opinion, that legal question was not difficult. We looked at the Constitution. I have a brilliant law clerk that loves history and loves everything Michigan, and so him and I have so much fun working together on cases. And we dug back and we looked at our prior constitutions, we looked at the Constitutional Convention, and frankly, it was an easy question, legal question for us. So I understand that, that the other pieces of that might have been viewed as a difficult decision, but it wasn't for me. When I was asked to serve on the court, no one asked me to do anything other than my job, and to do my job the way that I thought it needed to be done, and that was to decide cases and be. No one can be completely impartial and unbiased. Of course, you have life experiences that impact your decision making, but you have to keep those in check. You have to be aware of those. And so for me, I understood. It was very possible that I would lose support and I would lose an election, and I just didn't care. I wanted to wake up the day after the election and look at myself and my husband and my 4 children and say, I did my job, I did it the right way, I made the right decision, and whether I won or I lost, that's what mattered to me. There was no job is worth sacrificing what you believe in, and so it was easy. It was an easy decision.